Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another random review. Today's random review comes from 1972, directed by Michael Apted, and it's the triple Echo, starring Glenda Jackson, Oliver Reed and Brian Deacon. I will say, not the greatest artwork cover. This is an indicator release. It's Region B locked, it's by number 119. This is Michael Apted's first cinema feature. At that point, he had done a ton of television. For Granada, he'd started his 7-Up series, which follows the lives of people every 7 years. But this was his first cinematic feature, and he was approached. Glenda Jackson was attached to the project, but they wanted somebody to work really quickly, so it was only a 6-week shoot, so that's why his name came up, just because he was used to working in television. It was shot on location, and it's set during World War II, and Glenda Jackson is running a farm because her husband is a prisoner of war in Japan. So she's trying to survive in this harsh environment, just her and her old Rottweiler. It's based on a novella by H.E. Bates, who's more famous for The Darling Buds of May. But this is a really interesting little film. She meets a soldier who's trespassing on her farm, and we get a nice vignette to open the film over the titles of Glenda Jackson doing farmy things like shooting rats with a shotgun. And he's out for a walk, and she, very much like the usual Glenda Jackson persona and how she was in real life, very confident and very adversarial and in his face about trespassing, but gradually she softens and brings in for some fried eggs and a cup of tea, and over time, as he takes walks on her farm, there's a tractor that hasn't worked for a couple of years, which he fixes, and then their friendship blossoms into romance. Again, this is a time where all the men were generally away, so women had to do tasks that traditionally were men's work, and the whole film is basically about gender fluidity, and masculine and feminine, because Glenda Jackson, no offence, is perhaps not the most glamorous female actor in the world, and has a kind of masculine side. She's perfect casting in this role, and then as the soldier played by Brian Deacon, he gets a week's leave and spends it on the farm, and then when he's due back, he decides that he's not going to go back. He's going to desert, and Glenda Jackson comes up with the idea, well, if you're going to stay here, they're going to be looking for you. The barracks is not that far away, so it would be better if you dress up as a woman and pretended to be my sister called Jill. He's not that keen on the idea. he doesn't really like the name Jill because it doesn't suit him. Later he would change it to a name that he much prefers because he doesn't like Jill. So he rides the tractor as a woman and does other tasks around the farm. But it's interesting as their relationship kind of changes, as he is her sister. Glenda Jackson doesn't seem to be as sexually attracted to him as a woman when he tries to get some horizontal jogging in. And then Oliver Reed literally drives across the field in a tank into the film. And Oliver Reed, who is always a kind of physically imposing character, he's almost as wide as he is tall. In the novella, the character is actually described with a very large head, because that describes Oliver Reed to a T. So the way Apted shoots the entrance of Reed is fantastic. It's over a hill and he just comes over in a tank and he's sitting in the tank. There's a nice close-up of him driving and literally breaking the ice on a puddle. So originally they're actually lost and they're looking for another road. But then when Oliver Reed realises Glenda Jackson's on her own and she has a sister, then his interest is piqued and he comes by on several occasions. And originally at the start, Jill has got a sore throat and that's why she can't talk and she's in hiding. There's a nice touch where Oliver Reed and one of his cohorts, Glenda Jackson's shotgun isn't shooting straight, so they fix it so it shoots straight. That'll come back later in the film. That's a nice callback, even though at the time we don't actually realise it's a callback. And Oliver Reed is very playful, but he's still, because the farmhouse has low ceilings, his head's almost touching the ceiling, and he does have, even though he's kind of jovial, there is a definite menace to his performance. He's absolutely fantastic in this film. He has wonderful looks. I mean, Glenda Jackson's final look in the film is fantastic. Oliver Reed's final look for final expression in the film is absolutely fantastic. So he's very physical. He has menace, even though at times he's very jovial. And it's near Christmas and the barracks are having a Christmas dance, so Oliver Reed wants Glenda Jackson and Jill to come to the dance. But as we know, Christmas dances in the barracks is more than just a kiss under the mistletoe the soldiers are after. So the relationship between Glenda Jackson and Jill becomes more and more strained. They have more arguments as Jill becomes a burden, because obviously Glenda Jackson has to feed Jill, and there's only so much food, there's only so much money. She's talking about she's going to have to cash in her marriage allowance for her husband as prisoner of war in Japan, even though she's kind of resigned to the fact she's never going to see him again. There's lots of wonderful character moments as far as the male roles, female roles, which makes the film again still interesting today, and another wonderful Indicator release. And then at the dance, Oliver Reed, again, that physical menace really comes to the fore. That air of sexual violence, when men expect a certain outcome on a dance or a date, and Oliver Reed is truly terrifying when these scenes happen, because Jill and Alice, Glenda Jackson, the character, have a kind of fight, and then Jill is determined to go to the dance, even though Glenda Jackson knows exactly what's going to happen. And the ending of the film, you could argue, is predictable up to a point, but it does have an unexpected kind of really effective ending, and the different levels of what that ending actually means. So the film is called The Triple Echo, which might not make that much sense, but it kind of makes sense when you delve into the extras, and if you listen very carefully. In the US, it was called Soldiers in Skirts, or Soldier in Skirts, which makes it sound like, a sex comedy or something, which is definitely not. So as usual with Indicators limited editions, you get a nice booklet. There's Brian Leonard, there's a very young Michael Apted, and again there's essays and photos in the book. It's a 2K scan. There's a featurette, A Matter of Life and Death, from 2019 for 15 minutes, which is really interesting with Michael Apted, because he talks about, this was obviously his film debut, and he's dealing with like two titans, Glenda Jackson, who won an Oscar the year before and would win an Oscar the year after. And she knew the story, she knew the script inside out. And then he had Oliver Reed, who pretty much just turned up and went, "What's this all about then?" Apparently Glenda Jackson and Oliver Reed worked well professionally, but personally they didn't really get on too much. Oliver Reed's goal when he first met Michael Apted was to get him drunk, like his goal was most days. So there's lots of stories of Oliver Reed trying to get people drunk, which seems to be a common theme in these special features with films featuring Oliver Reed. So that's really interesting, and Michael Apted talks about how throughout his career, to him, the female characters and their journeys are far more interesting than male characters. He did Gorillas in the Mist with Sigourney Weaver, and plenty of other things with Jodie Foster and Sissy Spacek. Identity Crisis is a 29-minute interview with actor Brian Deacon, talking about, because this was his first film role. I think he said he was like 10 weeks out of film school, and this was like his, not film school, acting school, and then this was his first experience with Glenda Jackson and Oliver Reed. A Different Perspective from 2019 is a 25-minute interview with the editor, Barry Vince, which is actually quite interesting, because he does go into kind of three moments in the film, or three scenes in the film, that how he edited it and talked to Michael Apted kind of changed how those scenes kind of played out, which is kind of fascinating, because you kind of get an idea of where the director comes from as far as knowing what happened on set, and then the editor looking at the film from a distance as like an audience essentially, and the changes and the effects of cutting things slightly differently. Then we have a 9-minute feature called Dreaming Up from 2019 with the costume designer Emma Porteous, talking about the challenges of period costume, because again it's set during World War II. There's also a nice rec of a German plane on the farm, which again gives kind of a perspective of what's actually going on and what Brian Deacon's character would go back to if he went back to the army. The Emotion of the Moment, an 8-minute piece from 2019 with composer Mark Wilkinson about the score of the film. A Sense of Justice from 2019, which is 23 minutes, which is an appreciation by Neil Sinyard, who's a regular on Eureka, especially the Billy Wilder films on Eureka. There's a Super 8 version and a couple of trailers. So again, a really nice release of again a film that is pure indicator, but a film with tremendous performances. Oliver Reed, especially with that fine line between the jovial and the truly menacing when he doesn't get what he wants. Jovial when he thinks he's going to get what he wants, and then quite terrifying when he doesn't get what he wants, and the realisation hits. Just a wonderful, essentially a triple header of acting. Really good direction, because they wanted to shoot it quickly, like 6 weeks, like I said. There's a very fluid camera going through the farmhouse and out. There's lots of kind of longer takes that if they did it in a studio they would probably cut in several places, but just for time Apted just did it in kind of flowing shots, which works a lot better, I think. It's just a really good, interesting film. I know the indicator sale has passed, but if you did pick it up, I'm sure you would find it a little bit interesting. So thanks very much for watching this random review of a triple echo from 1972. Please let me know in the comments if you've seen it, what you think about it, and hopefully you'll join me again for more random reviews. This is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, saying farewell.